Welcome to Patient. I'm Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this is Dan MacNamee. He is, what can I say about him? He's originally from Cleveland. He now lives in Paris with his family. Not too shabby. I'm going to let him tell most of the story, but his book and his Substack of the same name are the intriguingly titled Everything That Makes Me Happy Makes Me Sad. Dan, let's just get right into it because you don't get to be on this show unless you've been through some really rough shit. So, Dan, what was the healthcare experience that radicalized you?
Oh, right. Radical certainly changed me. I guess if I think about it enough, radicalized me is probably the right way to consider it. I was 40 years old. I was relatively young, healthy, as happy as one is in those days. It was 2020, and I had an odd pain in my left leg. And that stuck around for about a week or so. It was this odd, deep, sort of throbbing pain that I'd never had before. But I was still young and dumb and had the idea that I might be invincible, or certainly never considered the possibility that I was invincible, if that's not actually a word. And then that pain went away, but it came back to my right leg. And eventually my wife convinced me to go see a doctor. So we were living in Paris at the time, where my wife is from. So she convinced me to go see a doctor one Wednesday morning, the 30th of June, 2020. And that doctor didn't know what the problem was. She couldn't quite figure it out. So she sent me up to New, which is just next to Paris, basically, for an ultrasound. And they dug around on my calf and found a blood clot. And that led me to the next door office to get an MRI. And the great thing about the system in France is that they actually read the MRIs that day. So that's great, unless they tell you that they drag you back into that room about 20 minutes later and they point at the screen like they did to me and they say, told me that I had pancreatic cancer. So I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic pancreatic cancer that had spread to my liver on 30 June 2020. I never asked for any timelines or prognosis because I knew enough that pancreatic cancer is one of the really mean ones, and I didn't want that in my head. But since then, so it's been what, 5 and a bit years now, I have sort of dug into the stats a little bit. And I read the other day that stage 4 metastatic pancreatic cancer, the survival rate, 5-year survival rate, something like 3%, which is not very good. It's not very high, but I've beaten that 5 years. And after sort of 9 months of chemotherapy and 2 medical trials, one very early stage medical trial, I've been off treatment and cancer free now for over 2 years. So it's incredible.
Yeah, less than 3%. I can't believe, look at both of us sitting here.
I
We,
know.
we're both alive. That's an
I know.
amazing thing to have happen and to be alive at a moment when such things are possible feels really insane. And like you, I didn't really want to know the odds until I felt like I was out of the woods. And then you look at the odds and you go, "Oh, oh shit." I mean, I knew it was bad, but oh shit. And you at the time have two young children. Your children are still young. And also, I haven't seen you talk about this a lot. What else is going on in the world in like June of
Yeah.
2020, Dan?
Yeah. I mean, we were peak COVID time. So we were living in Paris at the time, and I'm from Cleveland, and my whole I've got lots of doctors in my family. I'm not a doctor, I'm a lawyer, but we moved back
What
to
a
Cleveland.
disappointment to your family, you
Yeah, I
must say.
know. Honestly, the thought has crossed my mind that, yeah, we've all looked at different professional paths and wondered what if, but we moved back to Cleveland really because I felt navigating a medical system is so complicated, even if you are fluent in the language and the culture. But it is very culturally dependent on, how you interact with doctors and how that system operates. And so we moved back to Cleveland just because I was more comfortable with that. And on our flight, which was peak COVID time or the trough of COVID, whichever way you look at it, there were we were in premium economy because my brother bought us the tickets. And we were the only four people in premium economy. There was then maybe three other people in economy class and one person in business class. So there was like seven people on the Paris to Detroit flight, which was, I mean, it was, we were double masked and we had face mask things going. It felt like we were like human biohazards flying back to Detroit. And it was just difficult even to get my wife in because she's not a citizen. So we had to go to, they had to call the embassy and everything. I mean, everything was more difficult. And the thing that's I think most interesting is I have such an odd view of of COVID because it was a constant worry because everything was more restricted. You couldn't go to places with, if I had to go to appointments, you couldn't go with multiple people, et cetera. So it's much more restricted. But I also don't remember being scared of COVID. Like people talk about COVID being a trauma.
See, that's the good thing about having late stage
Uh-huh.
pancreatic cancer.
Yeah. And I remember it
COVID
being,
schmovid.
yeah. I remember being scared of it because I was, I had I was like, immune or whatever with the chemo and all, but it was so tangential. And so now when people like talk about it, and if you look at, what's happened politically in Europe and the United States after that, obviously you can draw a lot of what happened from what happened to COVID, like where's the chicken and egg? I'm not really sure, but I remember COVID as just being like, yeah, I don't know, something else was trying to kill me. Very odd sort of relationship with that period of time that was so tumultuous for the rest of society, but that tumult was marginal to me.
Tell me why, for those who don't know, why is pancreatic cancer one of the bad ones? None of them are good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the reasons is it's often caught late. So, you don't get sort of stage one or stage two. It happened, people catch it late because it's a small little organ and it, produces enzymes that help with digestion. So the secondary effects or what you feel from it, you don't feel till quite late. Like I was never sick with it. I never had any digestive problems. I never had stomach pain. I never had anything. So mine was just caught, thankfully, because I had a blood clot. I mean, that blood clot could have killed me, but it's what flagged the cancer, thankfully. And also, and the pancreas is a small, very active organ. So there's going to be doctors on here which may correct me, but those cells turn over so quickly that the tumor in the pancreas itself can grow so quickly, and because it's connected to the liver, I think it just fires out malignant cells that get picked up in different organs. But it's pretty much, you know, it's when I go to see doctors now, they'll say, they'll look at my case file and they will actually say like, wait, you were diagnosed with pancreatic in, but huh. I don't want that. I don't want to be remarkable for being alive. I just want to be alive.
I always say the same thing, like I don't want to be the exception.
No.
I fortunately I feel like we are moving in a direction where we are becoming less exceptional, Dan, which
Yes.
is really
Yeah.
great. That's the dream. You said you weren't sick from the cancer. The real party for you starts with treatment, which you describe as not fun. I guess
Yeah.
I guess what I've heard about chemo then, so apparently it's not a good time.
No, I always say you should avoid cancer and chemo if possible. Like if you're given the choice, I would choose option B on that one. I mean, chemo, it affects everybody differently. But I remember the first time I came home after chemo, and I remember sitting so we moved back to Cleveland. We lived at my mom's house, my mom and my stepdad's house. So it was myself, my wife, and my two boys, and we were living at my mom's house. And I was sitting on my mom's back deck speaking to one of my really good friends, Gordon, who had come over. And I remember just being in tears. And I said, I have no idea how I can do this again. And at that point, the only thing you can do is chemo. If the chemo doesn't work, and for about 40% of patients in my population, it doesn't work. So I'm just hoping the chemo works. I'm just hoping I have the opportunity to do more chemo, which is like having the opportunity for somebody to throw scalding water in your face. Like you look for, but I remember after that first time, I'm like, I don't know, I can't do that. I cannot imagine every 2 weeks or every week going through this. And the thing is, you just do because it's the only way to stay alive. You'll crawl through broken glass. You'll have chemotherapy hooked up, and you'll do it because that's the way you can stay alive. And that's the way I can see my wife. That's the way I can see my children grow up. So you just do it, and I don't think it gets easier physically, but mentally you become to expect it. And you know there's going to be a trough, you're going to fall down, and then you'll crawl back up and then go back down, fall back up. And I sort of described it as every week or two, I would get kicked into this deep, dark hole and I would scratch my way back up to the light. And then, you get thrown back in and then you scratch your way back. It's just that process.
Do you feel your doctors prepared you for that? Do you feel you knew what you were going to get into?
I don't think anybody can. I mean, it's something I write about a lot now, and I wrote about in my book, and I write about a lot in my Substack and a piece I'm writing now. I think there are real limits to human empathy and sympathy. Like it's there we have a huge capacity for it, but it's impossible to know what it's like to be told that you are probably going to die soon. I just don't think the human mind will allow us to stare at that by choice. I think the only way you can really understand it is if you're forced to stare at it. And the only way you can understand how difficult chemo is by going through it. Somebody comes up and tells you it's the worst thing you're ever going to feel. Like, okay, well, I don't know, I've been pretty sick. And like even when you yourself get very sick with the flu, we forget about how bad it was. Your brain scrubs out the hardest parts because it's the pain is too severe. And so I don't think anybody can prepare you for it.
Yeah, I think, and I agree with you because there's the actual physical challenge of treatment, and then there is, as you've written about, just the emotional, mental. Oh, as you said, it's like m my death is not abstract anymore. It's not a, well, yeah, I mean, I know we're all going to die someday. I always say I might not finish this bottle of shampoo.
Yeah.
That's how real that it gets. But then you went into clinical trial, love clinical trials. Tell me
Yeah.
what that was like because that was another uprooting for you.
Well, first of all, I just want to say with on the COVID thing and just generally like the different perspective, and I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. Like we are living in such a weird, intense, terrifying time. Do you ever want to scream out that we need to be more grateful for what we have? And
I
it like
literally,
getting
Dan,
into
I was literally having a conversation with someone last week and I said, so I guess we all just forgot that there was a pandemic and a whole bunch of people we know died. I guess we just
Mhm,
forgot that. And as you
mhm,
said, maybe our brains need to forget the pain, and that
yeah,
includes forget a pandemic. But the collective amnesia about it is shocking to me, especially because so many of us know people who died. So many of us experienced COVID really badly.
yeah. Mhm.
All
We're
of us had
we're
our
in right
lives,
about yeah.
all of us had our lives upended dramatically. Every single person on this planet had their lives dramatically upended. And we're all just like, I don't know, whatever, back to our bullshit. It's
You're
crazy to me.
we're so ungrateful.
We're so ungrateful for the scientists who
Mhm,
fast-tracked
mhm,
treatment.
mhm,
Like,
mhm. Yeah,
unbelievable who saved these lives. And it's just like, yeah, whatever. Like the fact that we don't even comprehend the magnitude of that
yeah.
achievement, the fact that we're not all dead is amazing. Like I'm reading a book now, I'm reading a novel now, and I'm a Donahue novel about the 1918 flu
Oh,
epidemic. And it's just like, Right. Like this is what it was. It was just like you just died. Everybody just died.
Mm.
Everybody
Yeah.
just died. And the fact that we are living in this era now where we've just like that 5 years later forgotten is astonishing. And I sometimes forget too. I mean, I want to ask you about that. We'll get back to the clinical trial because I wanted to talk about that. But when you have lived through something this absolutely transformative that changes who you think you are as a person, I think other people sometimes have this idea that you must have some deep wells of wisdom and insight, and that you must now just be living every day, stopping and smelling the roses. And I want to
Mm.
know what's
I
that?
think I think I felt I had more wells of wisdom before. I
Uh-huh.
think
Yeah.
I I think with this, I think what age shows me and what this showed me maybe too young is that I don't actually know anything. And I don't have any control over the most fundamental aspects of my life. The most fundamental aspect of my life is how long I will live and when I will die. And I do not have control over that. And we in Western society, and maybe all societies, but I only know Western society well, we do everything we can to ignore that, to deny it, to distract ourselves away from it. So the only thing I know is that I have very little control over how things work, and I try to be grateful to be alive, and I am grateful to be alive. The problem is what that the gratitude for being alive, the other side of that is the terror of dying. And so, yeah, I feel that gratitude. But if I just allow my brain to think about it one step further, I remember that I'm also terrified. And it's both things at the same time. And so I feel sometimes guilty for not being happy all of the time because I feel like people are like, I feel like I should be because this is all I wanted to do was be alive. All I wanted to do was be alive, to hug my kids, to hug my mom, to be there with my I wanted to do, and now I have that. And yet the human condition is such that I ask for more, and I don't know how to deal with it. I would love to forget everything I learned, if I'm
Yeah,
honest.
I will say, Dan, though, I think about that a lot too. I think about the impossibility of just living at that pitch. And it reminds me of things I've learned. I've learned a lot from people who dealt with infertility because all you want is that baby. All you
Mm.
want is a baby. And then however you get it, whether it's through fertility treatment or through adoption, you get that baby. And then someday that kid really pisses you off. And you were like, you little shit,
Yeah,
this thing that I wanted more than anything in the world. And whether it's a child or more time in our own lives, I think it's human and I think it's healthy to dwell in those moments of just being a person who gets angry and who gets distracted and who can't just live in that Zen-like state the whole of our lives, right? Because sometimes your kids are little shits and sometimes we're little shits and we just
yeah,
have to kind of accept that too. So
for sure.
tell me before I go completely off the path about what your clinical trial was like.
And this is part of the reason why I brought up the COVID thing before, is because I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to go into, I mean, if I had been diagnosed 10 years before, I'd be dead. Like we basically cured COVID in record time. We came up with a vaccine that protected people from death from COVID in record time. We're curing they cured me. My oncologist said I'm in, complete remission, which is incredible. And it's all because we're curing some of the most incurable diseases known to man. So I did 9 months of chemo, and when we were like maybe 6 months into the chemo, we started to ask, what's next, what's next, what's next? And I had some meetings with Dr. O'Reilly at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York with her and her team. And then we had some meetings in MD Anderson down in Houston just to talk about what clinical trials are you guys doing? Could I possibly be eligible for any of them? I ended up getting hooked up with Dr. O'Reilly at MSK. and I did a immunotherapy trial with a PARP inhibitor. So the PARP inhibitor was a pill I took every day that would stop the malignant cells from protecting and masking themselves. And then the immunotherapy jacks up the immune system so that it can recognize and go after the cancerous cells. It doesn't work normally in hard tumors like mine, but I have the BRCA genetic mutation, me and Angelina Jolie. She and I have so much in common. We are like spitting image, our lives. But I went up that, what I did that for 2 years. And during that time, my tumors shrank. And at the end of that, they disappeared, which is like, it's breathtaking. And so the decision then was, do we just take that as a W and hope for the best and monitor? And if it comes back, we'll knock it back with the immunotherapy. But this is where, a lot of the faith and trust has to come in with doctors. So Dr. O'Reilly, she's one of the best in the world. And they were going on this, they had this new phase 1 trial. So I think it was phase 1, it was still testing human safety. So I was the third patient to do it. And it was basically the high dose chemotherapy with toxic doses of certain types of vitamins to basically have your system freak out, have the cells open up so that the chemotherapy can go in there and take out any remaining cancerous cells that we can't pick up on the scans. And then the idea is you go back and you replant with stem cells. So there was treatment with a stem cell replanting and then a second treatment with the same thing. So it was 2 rounds of treatment and 2 stem cell transplants, and it was incredibly intense, incredibly difficult. But I survived it. And whether or not that was the thing that drew a line under the cancer, we don't know because I was only the third patient. But I was terrified to be a part of it and grateful to be a part of it at the same time.
think that's, yeah, I think that's exactly what it feels like to be in those shoes. I've been in exactly those shoes. So, and
Because
it's
your
so,
trials, they were early stage as well,
I
or
was one of the first 8 humans.
it's
Same thing.
it's
Immunotherapy. Yeah. First 8 in the world. First 3 in the world. Look at us. It's very cool. It's amazing. And I feel like we got there in a good moment because now in some ways it feels like we're going backward. I want to ask you one more thing because, I was reading some of the things you wrote and you used the phrase about going back to normal life. And that is a phrase I really grapple with, right? Because you do still have to like get dinner on the table. You do still have to get the kids off to school. And you do have to be quote unquote normal. And you are also dramatically changed. And I
yeah.
always feel like now I am in a population, like you said, it's like some of us have stared into the void and it does change you fundamentally. What does normal life look like for you now?
Still figuring it out. I mean, the only I would the way I see the world now probably would work best in some sort of Buddhist society, but I don't live in one of those societies. I live in Paris or the United States where like I gotta wake up and go to work and you know like those conversations and that thought process just doesn't really fit well into my old life. I made choices and constructed this life and I fought to stay alive, to live this life, and I want to live this life. And so I do need to go back some amount of steps so I can try to fit back into my old clothes. I decided I was going to go back to work for a couple of years at least, just to A, to repay supportive of me and my family, and B, because I just need to figure out who I am and what I'm capable of doing. And I'm 2.5 years out now, and it's a struggle, honestly. I basically just want to be around my wife and kids and my family and my friends, and that's all I want to do. But it's really hard to pay a mortgage with that.
If we could just monetize
So, So,
Hanging out with our loved ones. Right? If we could
yeah,
just
it's going to
monetize
be
them.
difficult.
Yeah. No, I agree
So
completely. It's challenging.
I
Dan,
don't know. I don't know how where that takes me necessarily. I I I can't forget the things I've learned, so I need to figure out how to navigate this world with that new view or vision, with my new capabilities, which are in some ways greater than they were before and are some ways lesser than they were before.
yeah. Yeah. And then I would imagine the more time passes, I'll say for me, trying to parse what is just, I feel this way because I'm aging, or I feel this way because I am now a long-term survivor. It's everything else that's happened. It's puzzling, and ultimately, it's becomes more about the journey we're all on in our own unique ways. Dan MacNamee, thank you so much for talking to me. Your book and Substack. Please subscribe to this guy's Substack. It's really entertaining and amazing and funny, and it's not easy to be funny about these things, but you truly are. It's called Everything That Makes Me Happy, Makes Me Sad, which is
Yeah.
on the money. It is a completely on the money
Yeah.
emotional state. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Enjoy the rest of your Parisian day. It's been a real
No, thank you
pleasure.
very much. Thank you very much. And I'd love to speak to you anytime. Always here.
You got it. Thank you, Dan.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.